If we believe love always wins, then we need to believe that there is no more important battle for love to win than the battle against homelessness. Homelessness has become an incredibly controversial issue. It's become polarized. It's become politicized. It's become hard to talk about, hard to read about in the paper, and very easy to argue about. But we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it even if we're passionate, even if we might disagree. As long as we keep talking about it, as long as we keep listening to each other, love will always win. We have to be open to good-intentioned, honest questions, and we have to give honest answers, even when they're not the answers that we want to give. We need to be willing to listen and see homelessness another way. We need to be patient. We need to be understanding. We need to know that people may disagree with us. We need to be willing to listen and share. But we also need to beware. Beware those in person or in writing or in the media or in office whose goal is not dialogue, but rather to make you afraid of the homeless, to make you angry at the homeless, to make you want to blame the homeless. We need to beware of that. But don't worry, because I think the conversation that we can have is a good one. So here I'm going to give you some questions. Here are some good-intentioned, honest, reasonable, legitimate questions about homelessness and some of the ways that our core values at Catholic Charities will help you give honest answers to others that you talk about when it comes to homelessness. And these are all answers based in love. First question, why are there so many homeless people in Spokane? It suddenly seems like things are exploding. There are lots of reasons for this. But keep in mind, there are 50,000 people in Spokane that are living at or below the federal poverty line. What that means is that they are one broken down car away, one unexpected medical bill away, one lost shift at work away from spiraling into homelessness, where they'll start couch surfing, where they'll double and triple up, and when they burn those bridges, they'll move into their car, and then they'll be homeless. 50,000 people in the queue waiting to become homeless unless we do something about intergenerational poverty. And that's where we have to walk upstream and figure out what makes people homeless and work on that. Rents are up 50% in the last 7 years for low-income housing in Spokane. That's a reason for homelessness. The opioid crisis is really becoming very profound in our community. And you may ask, well, I see all these 16 to 24-year-old kids. They look homeless, they're downtown. What's going on there? Well, those 50,000 people, there are a lot of young kids living in those homes that are living at or below the poverty line. And when your home life is so unstable and so chaotic and so painful, I'm not surprised that you may want to spend 19 hours a day downtown instead, when you could be at the fountain in the park, or you could be hanging out and walking around downtown. That's why homelessness is up. That's why you see so much. Next question, is Catholic Charities attracting homelessness? This is an understandable and reasonable question. It is okay to ask this question. Don't ever be mad at someone for asking this question. We all worry about it. We all talk about it, and you're going to hear a lot about it this year in Spokane. Here's what I can tell you. 80 to 85% of the street homeless individuals that you see downtown, these are the folks pushing a shopping cart, talking to themselves, look like they haven't changed their clothes in a few weeks. 80 to 85% of them are born and raised within 70 miles of downtown Spokane. These are our people. However, at Catholic Charities, we believe that every person deserves dignity. And it doesn't matter if you're from Spokane or Syracuse or Syria. You're going to get a meal and a bed at the House of Charity if you need it. But it's okay to ask that question. And it's something you're going to hear about, because it's something that could make us afraid. It could make us angry. One person gets a bus ticket from Portland to Spokane, a homeless person. The newspaper does a story about it. For the last 3 years, I've been pulled aside by people in the grocery store saying, I heard Portland was sending all their homeless people to us. One person got a bus ticket. These are our people, but more importantly, they're human beings. Next question, is Catholic Charities enabling the homeless? This is a really, really hard one. And it's okay to ask this question too, because it's going to pull at our heartstrings. At Catholic Charities, we believe that every human being is made in the image and likeness of God. And if you believe that, then every human being deserves dignity and respect and compassion, even if you can't stop drinking, even if you can't stop using. This is hard. This is a hard question because the truth is, yes, we are enabling some people and we know it. We're enabling their human dignity, but we also are realizing that some people may indeed die from their addiction. Every single person in this room knows somebody in their family, in their work life, somewhere in your life who struggles with addiction. You all already know how hard this is. I don't have to tell you. Some people will try dozens of times to get clean and sober. Some will succeed. But the ones that don't succeed still need to eat, sleep, and go to the bathroom indoors. That's basic human dignity. You may hear that there are other kinds of shelters in Spokane where you have to be clean and sober to get in, and that's good. You may hear the other shelters say, House of Charity is doing it wrong. Catholic Charities is making this worse. You're part of the problem because you're enabling people, because you're letting them in when they're not sober. You may hear the other shelters say that, and here's what I'll say about that shelter. God bless them. Thank God they're here. They do amazing work. When we finally get someone clean and sober at the House of Charity, we need to have somewhere for them to go where they don't run into all their old drinking buddies. So thank God there are other shelters that do it differently than us. We need lots of options. There is no either or, it's both and. Now, what about all the money we're spending on homelessness? Money is a big deal. Let's talk about the math and the money of homelessness. It's $3,200 a night, state annualized cost per night to be in the hospital. It's $148 a night to be in jail. It's $1,100 a night to be in Eastern State Hospital. It's $11.22 cost per unit per night to be in the House of Charity. Where do we want to spend our money as a community? The average homeless super utilizer on the street can spend anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 per year per person on police, fire, ambulance, ER, hospital, jail, court costs, and social services. Or for less than $9,000 a year, we can put them in Father Bach Haven, Donna Hanson Haven, Buter Haven, Pope Francis Haven, Sisters Haven, Schweitzer Haven, or Doyle Jacqueline Haven. Where do we want to spend our money? The math on this is staggering. We had a homeless client who went to the ER 62 times in 1 year. That's 62 911 calls, 62 ambulances, fire trucks, and police cars rolled, 62 visits to the ER. We put him into housing the next year, he went twice. Well, you know who loves that? Providence, Deaconess, sure, they love that, but you know who loves that more? Every single person in this room. This is your tax money. And if your loved one is having a heart attack in the middle of the night, you want the ambulance there in 3 minutes, not 14 minutes because they're on their 10th call of the day at House of Charity. The math on homelessness is amazing, but if we spend money in the right place, we will save money for the entire community, but more importantly, we'll save human dignity and we'll prove that love always wins. Another question, is Catholic Charities allowing crime and lawlessness as we serve the homeless? This is a fair question. This can be a scary thing to talk about. We've all driven around downtown. I spend a lot of time at House of Charity, so do my staff. They know these folks by name, but a lot of you don't, and that's okay. But at Catholic Charities, we do have rules. People will try and tell you there are no rules at House of Charity, there's no rules in our housing. We take anyone in any condition as long as you respect the staff and the facility and the rules. And if you break a rule, we'll politely ask you to leave, but the next day, if you come talk to us and tell us how you're gonna do things differently, we'll let you back in. You get a second chance at Catholic Charities, and if you need it, you get a 22nd chance, because that's human dignity, because love always wins. We have lots of rules in our housing. If you commit a crime against person or property, we want you to be engaged by law enforcement and we want you out of this community. That's important to know because there is a criminal group that embeds and attaches itself to the homeless population. Why? Because our clients are easy prey. You can rob them, you can beat them up, you can take advantage of them, you can human traffic them, you can take their meds. It's easy for criminals to attack homeless people. And so there are criminals that hide in plain sight in the homeless population. And we would regularly love for them to go to jail. So there are rules at Catholic Charities, and we are careful about how we treat people. But at the same time, we have to protect our clients and our staff. We don't support lawlessness, or we do have rules in our programs. The dignity of every human person is essential. We say that all the time. You know what else is important? The dignity of business owners and of our neighbors and of downtown economy. That has to be dignity for them too. And to achieve that, we have to weed out the criminal element from the homeless population. We have to be good neighbors. There has to be able to be a downtown Spokane that thrives, as well as a homeless provider that offers compassion. Last question. Actually, two more. Is Catholic Charities concentrating too many homeless people in one area? We've built a couple buildings around the House of Charity. Currently, there are 9,148 units of apartments in downtown Spokane. We have 250 units around the House of Charity. This is not a concentration. This is less than 2%. And we have lots of staff in these buildings to take care of these very vulnerable people. But it's a fair question to ask. You see all these buildings going up in one spot, you start to get worried. We flash on the projects, these giant, massive projects that we see on TV in Chicago or New York. That's not what this is. Cabrini Greens in Chicago has 4,000 units. The projects in New York City and Queens have 6,000 units. We have 250 units out of almost 10,000 for the homeless. We think that we're building in the right spot because this is where services are for these people. This is where they can get help that they need. And the last question is all of this never ending. Are we ever going to end homelessness? You're going to read this in the newspaper. Rob McCann said he was going to end homeless back in 2016. He was going to end homelessness. Luckily, I've been saying the same thing from microphones like this for 19 years. And I know exactly what I'll say, and I'll repeat it here tonight. We will never end homelessness. As we're eating dinner here tonight, someone is becoming newly homeless. Someone is losing their apartment, getting evicted, fleeing domestic violence. They've run out their gambit of couch surfing, their car has been towed away, and they are homeless. We are not going to end homelessness, but we can solve homelessness, and there is a difference. Solving homelessness means that every human being eats, sleeps, and goes to the bathroom indoors, which means we need shelters, and then once they're in shelters, we need some kind of path to put these folks in housing. And on top of that, besides homeless housing, we need more housing for the lower class, the lower middle class, the working poor, because there's nowhere for these families to go. We can solve homelessness. We know that because for 2 winters in a row, when House of Charity was open 24 hours a day, we did solve homelessness in this community. There was hardly anyone left sleeping outside. And we need to find a way back to that. But when we solved homelessness for that brief amount of time, it was good news for downtown Spokane. It was really hard news for the House of Charity and our block. The staff in the facility that was built to sleep 109 men only was sleeping between 300 and 400 men, women, couples, and their animals every night. The front of the House of Charity looked like a scene out of Woodstock. We know this. And that's hard to drive by. It's hard to look at. It makes people afraid. It might make them angry. It might make them look for someone to blame. The answer is to have more shelter space in Spokane, to have it be 24 hours a day, and for us to keep building housing, which we are going to do. We have to be open to good-intentioned, honest questions. We have to listen. We have to be open to a different perspective for sure. We have to be patient. We have to be understanding. But again, I tell you, beware the effort to make you afraid, to make you angry, or to make you place blame. That's a trap. Don't fall into it. It's slightly easier to dehumanize another person when you're afraid of them, when you're angry with them, or when you want to blame them. Please, please, please don't fall into that trap. But please do have conversations about this, even hard conversations, even conversations where you might not agree with your neighbor, with your family member, with your coworker. It's okay that we don't all agree. We have to keep having a dialogue about it. We can solve homelessness, we can beat homelessness, because love always wins.